What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, Monday, February. Not February. Holy shit. Okay, here we go. What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, Monday, November 21st, 2022. I am your host, Sean Murphy, alongside Jeff Iafrady. And Jeff, it's doomsday. It's time to hit the barricades. Run, find your children. Look for your loved ones. It's danger, Jeff. The sky is falling.
The tanks are incoming.
Yeah, man. Danger's incoming, man. It's hitting the fan. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Just in my personal life, obviously still continuing to Lions won today, believe it or not. So that's great.
Third time in a row. Not used to that.
No, I'm not. And on the brink of that, you get the news of Cade Cunningham, which it's not good news, but we'll get into it. There's a lot of explaining that. I got some words on it. I got to get out. So
yeah, for sure. So let's start with talking about that joint report from Shams Charania and James Edwards III that Cade Cunningham is feared to have a shin stress fracture and that currently the team is mulling over all of their treatment options. According to James Edwards III and Shams, they are reportedly trying to turn every stone before deciding to get surgery. So looking to see if, seeing if that indefinite time out will help with reducing the inflammation that is in his shin, will help with reducing the pain and the stress. Seems like this is an issue that's, been stemming since last season. So it actually looks like Cade's been dealing with this for a little while. And Jeff, I think we're going to start with the obvious thing here. Take as much time as you need to get 110%, because this was never about this season. This was always about the seasons to come, right? So first thing I reached out to Ashton after hearing the news and just said, hey man, just hope Cade's okay mentally, because that's just got to be devastating. So, thoughts and prayers for Cade, like mentally and, physically through this time. Because this was supposed to be a time where he could, take that next step, and this just only delays things, which is frustrating. But Jeff, I know a lot of people were already really frustrated and hanging on the brink with this season just because of the development and the youth and, the lack of what I think people were expecting to see more competitive basketball early this season. But with this, now, not only does that completely change the outlook of what this season was. Let's be honest. We're at this time of recording, we're at 3-13. That pretty much wrote the writing on the wall for what this season was going to be anyway. Right? Now, you're in a situation where Cade Cunningham's dealing with an injury. Jeff, I'm just going to say it. I think they should shut Cade down for the season.
And now
I think they should.
No, and I'm with you, Sean. That's your franchise player, especially in a season where you're 3-13, 3-14. It's a wash at this point. And honestly, you saw the discomfort with Cade in that Celtics game where he had really his worst shooting night, you could argue, of his career. Something just wasn't right. And then the report comes out, something involved with his shin. Now it's a stress fracture. Listen, the season already at this point, you knew they were going to be a lottery team. No one would be mad if Cade does not play the rest of the season. I think we'd all encourage that for him to get 100% healthy. And on top of that, really, if you look at what's happened around him, it's going to open up other opportunities. Yes, the downside is Jaden and Cade can't play a full season together, which is something we all wanted to see for them to build that chemistry. But in reality, though, it really, you get to showcase Jaden Ivey on a full scale, like as the guy. And on top of that, Killian Hayes gets opportunity. So Sadiq Bey, everybody. So at the same time, it is bad news. At least it's not something more, at least crucial to his career. A shin injury, he'll be able to come back from that. I know a lot of people have talked about, is it his diet? Is that related to it being a vegan? I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. But I do think for the big picture, it's really not that big a deal. Get healthy. The season's a wash. The Pistons are already in a mode right now where they're tanking. And I just don't think it affects them this season. Now, if you were playing for something or you're playing for a playoff spot, I think it'd be much more devastating than it is currently, to be honest with you.
I think the diet thing's a bit of a reach. Truth be told, I think a lot of people, on Twitter, again, and I think this just stems to, when things aren't going your way, when the games aren't going well, when the losses are stacking up, when the injuries are stacking up, you almost want to look for something to blame, or someone to blame. And I think a lot of times you've seen guys like Dwayne Casey be that scapegoat. You've seen Killian Hayes at times be that scapegoat. I've seen people try to turn Bojan Bogdanovic at times into that scapegoat. I think now, like with like the injury thing, I think if people are trying to blame Cade's health or like on his diet decisions, and like I think that's another thing because the entire point of veganese of eating a vegan diet is having a fresh and full, truly healthy diet, right? Like I think that's like a whole stemming of a different conversation. The ultimate thing is the injuries here. Like the injury is what it is, right? And like a lot of times you see a lot of young guys, come to the league and, adjusting to that 82 game schedule, adjusting to that lifestyle. It's not surprising that a stress injury could happen with that ramping up of minutes, right? But I think also with that, you kind of touched on some of those things already. This season isn't like, a lot of it in a sense from like your playoff hopes or your play-in hopes. Yes, the season is a wash, right? But there is still that opportunity for development. And I know a lot of people are looking at the losses and stacking up. And I know a lot of people are shifting their focus to Victor Wembanyama and the
Right.
top of the draft lottery stuff. And listen, I would be lying to you, Jeff, if I hadn't thought about what it would look like to have Victor Wembanyama in a Pistons uniform. Of course, I've thought about what that reality looks like. But first of all, the odds of it happening, even if the Pistons get the best draft lottery odds, the odds are more likely that he won't be a Piston than he will. So setting yourself up for that type of failure and saying the season's
Right.
only a success if that outcome happens is stupid. But also, you have to look at the fact that there's a ton of young talent on this team right now, and that this season is still pivotal minutes for them going forward. I would argue, Jeff, that this is the dog days of the rebuild, the dog days of the restoration, the rock bottom of it, if you will. But even during that, Jeff, as of recording, we're watching this really entertaining Kings game. We've seen over the last week that like the losses are getting closer and closer. Hey, like Killian Hayes is playing better and better. We're seeing
Yeah.
guys coming in off our bench. Jeff, is there not a lot of things to be optimistic about with this team going forward?
No question. And I think that kind of goes back to the point I made earlier is it gives guys an opportunity to step up and really showcase. Like for Killian Hayes, we recorded a video about a week or two ago talking about Killian Hayes and his future with this team. And it's like, hey, his answer, whether he's a part of your future, he's going to answer himself by his play. He's played well over the last stretch of games. He's looked like a completely different player than you've seen at the beginning of the season. Ivy has hit career highs. Sadiq Bey, I know he went out with an injury, but before that, the man was Iron Man. He was playing consistent, came off the bench, struggled a little bit. You've seen some ups and downs with Sadiq. But the big one for me and the one that it hurts more given his role is Isaiah Stewart. Because Cade, like I have no concerns. We know what Cade is. He's going to be an all-star someday. He started off playing really well. I know he didn't shoot the best percentage-wise, and that's probably the most frustrating part, Sean, is you didn't really get to see him hit his peak, but he still played really well. So it gives you a lot to look forward to, but this season is still about evaluating these young players, right? It gives guys more minutes, like for Killian and Jaden Ivey, staying out of foul trouble. Those guys are going to be looked upon more and more throughout the season, so their responsibilities increase, but that's what you got to love. I mean, to put Jaden Ivey in this position to be the guy and see how he handles it, all the attention he's going to get, in my opinion, next year, although the chemistry won't be there, I think Jaden Ivey will be an even better player given how much pressure he's going to be on this season. So, again, there's still plenty of good things to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, assuming he stays healthy, knock on wood, just with how everything's been going with this team. But I think, it's truly, invaluable minutes to be able to go out and 30 plus minutes a night have those touches because, one thing with playing alongside Cade is that he was going to have more of a secondary role. So, maybe Ivy can go out there. Who knows? Maybe he could be more prominent in that rookie of the year conversation. I personally think, assuming he stays healthy, because he's kind of been dealing with some injury stuff too, I think Paolo Banchero is still probably going to have that award wrapped up, even though neither of those teams are going to be winning many games. Let's be honest here. I think the other thing that you're seeing, just league wide is just how difficult it is for a lot of these teams to get a win in general. So I think a lot of it is we're seeing these young teams kind of, struggling for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
I mean, like Houston, a team that's looked at very similar vein is on the other side at 3-13 themselves. Right now, we're kind of alongside like the Hornets and the Magic who have 4 and 5 wins themselves individually. We're alongside the Warriors and not having a road win yet. Like we're alongside the Warriors and not having a road win.
That's an interesting stat.
That's part of where this season's just been bizarre to me. But I mean, also, Jeff, I mean, just talking about within the things that they can control, the things that they can get better. I mean, it's not a secret that they have to get better as the season goes on defensively. And I think in Cade's absence, like I'm just interested to see, and Beef Stew's absence as well. I'm just interested to see how this lineup evolves and how it changes. Like how much longer until Jalen Duren is
Yeah.
in the starting lineup. I mean, this guy just turned 19 like a few days ago. And I just can't help but feel like even though like Marvin, he's even made some decent plays in the offensive end tonight, his team looks better with Jalen Duren on the court. It just does. And
Yeah, they
so
do. They do. And we saw that impact opening night. Like his first game in the NBA at 18 years old. Now he's 19. He just turned 19. But at 18 at the time, you saw his immediate impact. And whether that speaks to how much the Pistons needed him or him as a player, he's been impressive. So Duren's going to get plenty of opportunities. But one question I'm curious about, and this is just something I'm going to be watching moving forward, is Ivy's been he's shown flashes on the defensive side. I'm curious to see how that progresses with the more of an offensive role he's going to be getting throughout the season. Because if he can be able to do both of those things, be a two-way player, not at a high level, but at a pretty good level, that's going to be impressive too. Because no question the offensive load is going to be on him. I'm curious to see how defensively he responds throughout the season. Because I still think he can get to another level.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as a whole, I think, especially with the return of guys like Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley, like we just brought up, I think the team looks a lot more competitive. And I think that they're going to naturally just get better on that end, just with those with just more veteran voices in the lineup. But in addition, I do want to talk about before we wrap up this video, because I think it is a good continued thing people are going to keep asking about, even with Cade Cunningham out of the lineup, even with Isaiah Stewart out of the lineup. People are still going to look at this team and look at the way that things are going, and they're still going to point the fingers at Dwayne Casey or Troy Weaver or anyone in the front, anyone in the organization. Realistically, let's be honest, it's just going to be Dwayne Casey, but
Right.
let's just be real. It's going to go to anybody just when you're losing games, right? What would you have to see for you to start asking questions about Dwayne Casey and if he's the best fit for this team? Me personally, I think it's when you start seeing the effort to dip. I think it's when you start to see, I think it's when you start to see just true regression across the board in every facet, which I actually think we've seen progression, even, despite what people want to say. I also do think, it's going to come down to the fact that you just need to see the continual development of these players. And I think you are. It's just not contributing to wins yet. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
No, we're in lockstep. I think a lot of it, yes, it's player development. The other part of it is just playing like these guys. They're not clocking out, right? That's the thing you look for throughout the season. But to me, there's not really a specific win total. Like for Dwayne Casey, and this is what I don't really understand. You look at some of the youngest teams in the NBA. Look how good they are defensively. You can go check that out on any website. They're not very good. Hint. Like that's usually how it trends. So for people to come at Dwayne, even for a guy like Dwayne who's had a ton of experience as an assistant, he's been really his strong suit's been the defensive side of that. That's really his cup of tea. So for people to criticize him this year with this team, I just don't think it's fair yet. Like we can all acknowledge that Dwayne's not the future of this team. He's the second oldest coach in the NBA.
Right.
To no one's surprise. That's just the reality. And there's a time and a place where Troy is going to feel and he's going to know when this team's ready to take that next step, right? Like the Wings did with Steve Yzerman. He felt like, okay, Blashill, everybody's calling for Blashill's job throughout the season. He waits to the draft, fires him, signs free agents, and then gets his Derek Lalonde. That's what the Pistons can do. They can wait, eventually, I think we're on the same, step as this. I think Dwayne's eventually going to move into some sort of front office role, work within the organization. Because I still think he's very respected, but his time as a head coach, I think people wanted the action of firing him to be right now. But how would that void for this young team? I mean, to get rid of their head coach, 20 games into the season, not even 20 games, and expect an assistant just to step up and these guys to be able to adjust. Keep that consistency. Keep
Yeah.
Dwayne at the helm until eventually you feel like this team's ready to compete. I mean, Dwayne is you're throwing him groceries and expected, groceries from 7-Eleven, expecting him to make a gourmet dinner. It's just not how it works. They're a young team and they still got plenty of time. So I'm not out on Dwayne yet. I'm not even, interested in that conversation because I understand where this team's heading and there's a process, right? It's like when the Grizzlies got Taylor Jenkins, right? That's when they felt like this team was good enough. We'll get our head coach eventually. It's just not right now. 20 games in, Sean. It's just not right now.
Yeah, exactly. And, and listen, yes, this team isn't where we wanted them to be this season, but there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. I don't think any of us, would have foreseen, all the injury issues that we've been dealing with from day one. I don't think any of us would have foreseen, just the fact that, we just really haven't been able to see a healthy 100% Cade Cunningham this season, even with, like he was playing pretty well to start the year, but to hear that this has been bothering him, for a while, you got to think, with the shooting struggles he's had, you got to wonder that, being able to have that, steady base with the shin, that's definitely going to be a factor. So, just overall, I think there's still a lot of basketball to be played. And with that, there's a lot of opportunities for this team to get better. There's opportunities for guys to come back. And who knows? Maybe Cade could come back in January. Maybe he could be back in this lineup at some point in December. I personally don't see that happening.
No.
I personally think they should shut him down for the season. And, listen, obviously the lottery is going to be a topic of conversation, but for now, focus on getting better. Focus on what you have in house, and don't hang your hat on this season being a success or failure on what happens in the lottery, because that is a dangerous game to be played.
It is. And on top of that, I could see why people, and another point for Dwayne, I could see why people would be, because again, there's things I can criticize Dwayne for this season, but to be this frustrated when Dwayne wasn't given a healthy roster off the jump. Now, if Burks, Bagley were available and you didn't have to play Kevin Knox and Corey Joseph for the start of the season, and again, Jaden Ivey, Cade, learning how to play together, like this is what I don't really understand, Sean, is we knew what we were expecting, but when it happens, people hit the panic button, even though me and you have talked about this for months about what we were going to. Now that we didn't expect him to be 3-14, but what's the difference between 3-14 or having 3 wins or 5-6 wins? There's context in a lot of these games, and what we've watched, I've seen a team be more competitive even without Cade. So I haven't been disgusted with what I've seen. Now every Pistons fan has their own opinion, but for me, I'm fine so far. I'm not going to hit the panic button. I got another year until I'm at least judging game by game, 15 games in. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, 100%. But with that, where are you at with this team? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the Cade Cunningham injury? Do you want to see him back this season? Let us know in the comment section down below. Obviously, number one thing is his health and well-being, and that's going to be at the forefront of the Pistons focus, as it should be. But folks, we still have a whole lot of basketball to talk about, because this is From Half Court, where we talk about not only the Pistons, but all things NBA. So if you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on Twitter at JeffIFrady and at Sean Half Court for more coverage. But with that, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.